Traditionally, there's two views on privacy, and this is a little bit theoretical, and I'll try to move it over to what practically this means for us. One is an access view of privacy. This would say that information about you is private as long as it's inaccessible to other people. So as long as I keep things hidden, as long as I only write them in my diary and I lock it up at night, as long as I tell nobody about information, if I close the door, shut the blinds, that's the only time I can have any expectation of privacy. And so the corollary to that is as soon as I release information, if I tell somebody, if I give information to a website, if I tell my company some information, I should therefore give up any expectations of privacy. It's almost an either-or situation. Information is private and inside of us, inaccessible. Or I release it and there's no expectations of privacy. Nothing, no norms to really govern what to do with that information. And so you can see the problem with that is that we regularly give up information to doctors, husbands, wives, friends, companies, that we have some expectation as to what they're going to do with it. We don't say, I've given it up now, it's all, for all the world to see. So the access version of privacy creates problems in that there's nothing to govern what we do with the information once it's out there. The alternative is what they would call a control view of privacy, saying you're in a private situation and your information is private if you can control it. So as long as I've created some either technology or laws to govern that that information, then that is going to be private information. And the example I would give is the access view of privacy would have you in a private situation if you were in a cell, a prison cell, and somebody else had the key. Say the guard had the key outside of the cell, and you're in the private cell, and they would say you're in a private situation there. Now, there's not very many people that actually consider prisoners to be in a private situation. They have no control over how the door is open and shut, but an access view of privacy would actually have them in a private situation. They're inaccessible to other people. Their door is shut. Now, the control version of privacy would say the prisoner is only in a private situation when the prisoner actually has the key. Then they control when they open and shut the door. And that access view would have them, anyone could have the key to the door. And it doesn't really matter as long as they're inaccessible to others. Both access and control views of privacy have their issues. The access view really doesn't give us much guidance. It tells us that we can keep it private or give it up. And leave the information up. And it doesn't help us anything after we give that over the information. And that's problematic. We have expectations, we need norms, we need rules, we create them with other people as to what people can do with our information between different relationships. So that doesn't help us too much. It's easy to research, it's easy to ask someone a question on it on a survey, but it doesn't help much in practice. The control version is difficult as well, however, only because you don't always have control, and that's the biggest ding on the control issue of the control view of privacy, is how can you ever really have control over your information? So practically, people will argue it's not possible. However, in the whole scheme of access versus control view, I would say that the control view is a little bit more practical for everyone in that we create norms, we have expectations between people that help us control. So we trust certain people, so we give over more information. While we can't control what they do with it, we feel like we can trust what they're going to do with it, and we form relationships to be able to do that. So the control view is a little bit closer, but both have their issues in practice. Something that is a little bit more practical is when we create expectations between people, what they call social contracts. So within a certain space, within a relationship with someone else, I give over certain information, and I know it will never leave that group of people or that person. The old adage is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Well, Vegas would be kind of a sphere or a zone within which you're not supposed to share what happened within that space or zone. But we do this all the time. A bunch of friends will go out for coffee, have a discussion, and you don't expect the information to go past that group of friends. And so while it's not Vegas, it's a coffee shop in Charlottesville or any other city in the nation, it still has an expectation or a zone of privacy around it. And that's more of where we create expectations of privacy is within these relationships with everyone else. Now, can I control what my friends say when they leave that table? No, I can't. And so when I give it over the information, given the access view, if I make it accessible to others, do I say, well, go and tell everybody? No, I don't. I still have expectations of privacy. So we create these relationships with organizations and companies, both employee and employer, take customer and the company, even governance issues, say board of directors, relationship to the rest of the company. And there are expectations of privacy and what we should do with information within each of these relationships. It doesn't have to be the same. Just as when I have coffee with some of my friends, that's a different expectation of privacy than if I have lunch with my students. That's a very different expectation of privacy that I would have. So the interesting fact of that is that it's not necessarily access or control, but it's more about the relationships that we have, number one. Number two, we always have expectations of privacy. We can't say anything goes. It's a fallacy. There is no, I release my information and anyone can use it however they want. And so when companies say that, well, you gave me your information, why would you expect me to keep it private? You can reasonably say, because I trusted you, because that's the expectation that I have. And just as when a friend of mine, if they tell anything that I've told them, I can say, I didn't expect you to share that information. Those are the same expectations and types of expectations of privacy. And point to where the control version and access version of privacy fall a little bit short in actually giving us much guidance.